Hi, and welcome back to the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy's e-learning program. I am Mr. Atwell, and today we're continuing with consumer arithmetic. Let's continue. The formula is a very simple one. The interest accrued over any given time period, right, is going to be given by principal times the rate times the time over the 100%. So, I represents our interest in dollars. The P represents our principal amount in dollars. R represents the period interest rate as a percent. And T represents the number of time periods. So if it's an annual interest rate, T will represent years, number of years. How many years we're talking about? If it was a monthly interest rate, T would represent how many months. If it was a daily interest rate, T would represent how many days. If it was a biannually interest rate, T will represent how many 6-month periods do you have. And that is the key when it comes to simple interest. Once you understand that the rate and the time must be in the same period, so same time period, it's really easy to manage it, even when it comes to compound interest, but we're going to come to that one in a bit. Now let's look at this. This is the formula. Interest is principal times rate times time over 100. Now let's look at the same example we had before, right? We initially borrowed $100 and our interest rate was 10% per month. If we had gone for 5 months, yeah, what would have been our total interest? Remember, same numbers from before. So here we have interest is principal times rate times time over 100. What's our principal? Our principal is the amount that we initially borrowed, which was our $100. Our rate, right, or period interest rate is 10% per month. And you write it as the number, 10%, because that's where this 100 comes from. 10 over 100, which is why we have this 100 down here. That 100 comes from the percentage value. And the time is 5 months. Let's just make sure. Is our rate and our time measured in the same period? Yes, because our rate is measured per month and our time is measured in months. So we could just multiply those, and then that will cancel that. 10 times 5 is $50, which means that the total amount that we will have to pay back, again, is our principal plus our interest as we saw before. So that's 150, which is 150. So you realize the formula works just as we had done our calculations before. And this works because simple interest is only applied or only accrued on the principal amount. So whether you paid back all or you paid back some, the simple interest is always accrued on the initial or the principal amount. So here we see the formula that the total amount that you must return will be the principal plus the interest. But I want to do a simple example just to show you all something. $100. You borrowed $100, right? Again, 10% a month. And how much of a month you take to pay it off, that is just the going rate, right? Now, let's say in the first month, you know, you're a hero. You pay off $90. So that means you only have $10 more to pay off, right? So you know what? You start to slack off. So you say, you know what? In month 2, man, I pay off $90 already. So this month you only pay off a $5. Yeah? And then in month 3, man, I only have $5 more, man. I'll pay off at $3 now, and then I'll wait until month 4 to pay off that $2. No. 90 plus 5 plus 3 plus 2, that's $100. Yeah, you're right. But what we forgot, it is 10% interest a month. So if you took 4 months to pay off, It means that every month, for every month, your interest is going to be for every month is going to be 10% of that 100, which is that same $10. So every month you must pay an additional $10. So what does your total become? Your total becomes $140. Now if you had bit the bullet and pay off your money in 1 month, you would be $110. If you had paid it off in 2 months, it would have been $120. But because you decided to slack off and reduce the amount you was paying off, you end up paying more money. Again, pay attention. Always keep up. Make sure, and if you can, flip more, cover more. Do what you can to ensure that you reduce the overall amount you must return or you must pay back. So let's just try some examples and some questions so that we can go forward, and then we're just going to end today. So let's see. Jim borrowed $10 from Tim at a rate of 10% per week. After 3 weeks, Jim repaid Tim all he owed him. Yeah? Well, how much interest does Tim end up paying Jim? Well, what do we know? We're looking at a simple interest rate here. So we're looking for principal, we're looking for rate, we're looking for time. Yeah? And I, if we have it. But we don't have it, so we're going to look at it. Jim borrowed $10 from Tim. What's that? Is that IPR or T? Well, that's how much he borrowed, so that will be our principal. At a rate of 10% per week. So our interest rate is 10% per week. Now, it means then that we have to have our time period in weeks. So after 3 weeks, they already put it in weeks for us, so we don't have an issue because our time period is already in weeks. So after 3 weeks, Jim repaid all the money he owed to him. How much interest does Jim end up paying Tim? Well, we know that interest is found by principal times rate times time over 100. So the amount of interest, or the total interest, will be the principal times the rate times the time over 100. So then that will be 10 times 10 times 3 over 100. So it means then that that is $3. So how much money in all did Jim give Tim? He would have paid back the principal amount plus the interest. $13. Yeah? Simple, right? It's simple interest. Now, suppose you wanted to find other quantities based on the formula. We need to be able to transpose. Now, I know some of us have already been comfortable with transposing, but remember what transposing is. If we want to find something, it means that we have to make it the subject of the formula. So, remember, if you know this one, you're good. Because you could use that one to find anyone. Let me show you. Suppose we wanted to find P. Yeah? It means that we want P to be on the side by itself. So we have to move everything else from that side with P. Well, it means that we have to nullify some of the operations that are currently going on here. Well, here, we're dividing by P by 100. So it means that we'll want to get rid of that 100 by multiplying. But if we're multiplying on one side, we must multiply on the other side. Balancing equations. Don't forget it. If you missed that session, you can go and look it over with Mr. Frederick. Yeah? So we have 100i. 100 times I is 100i being equal to P principal times rate times time. So if we want to find the principal, it means that we have to get rid of rate and time. And since they were multiplying, we can get rid of them by dividing. And if we divide on one side, we must divide on the other side. Boop, bap. So that we get principal is 100 times the interest over rate by time. Just take your time and do your transpositions and you'll be able to get it. Similarly, we could do it for rate and for time. And when you do it, you will get these formulas here that we see on the side. That for principal is 100 times the interest over rate by time. For rate is 100 times the interest over principal by time. And for time is 100 times the interest over principal by rate. Yeah? So, just take your time and you'll be able to solve for each of them. But let's just get some practice in solving for the various ones. And I would transpose on the questions to show you how you would go about doing that. So here we have a multiple choice question. It says, Mary invested $1,000 in a bank at a rate of 6% per annum. What per annum mean? What's that time period? Remember, we have to know what various time periods, right? So per annum is per, hi, there we go. Yeah. How much interest would she accrue, or would she, big word, no need for that big word, right? Would she get? You know, English is important in mathematics. So if you thought that English was not important, think again. Make sure that you learn your words. Make sure that you read. Make sure that you develop your vocabulary so that you will not be caught unawares. How much interest will she get after 9 years? This 9 years here will be our time. So this 6% is our rate, and this amount here is the principal. So Mary is investing money, which means that she would be getting the interest. Remember, if she was borrowing the money, she would have to pay the interest. So the question is how much interest? So we're asking specifically for the amount of interest and not the total amount. Be careful to that. If they ask us just for the interest, it is just to use the formula. If they ask us just for the total amount, we must add the interest to the principal. Now let's go. We want to find interest, and we know simple interest is found by principal times rate times time over 100. So principal is 1,000. Rate, 6%. Time, 9 years. Over 100. Hey, 100, oh not 100, sorry, 1,000. Sorry, my bad. So 100 into 1,000 is 10. 9 by 6 is 54. And 10 gives us $540. So, after 9 years, Mary would have gotten $540 in interest for her initial $1,000. Is that good? Is that bad? You have to decide. Remember what we said. Good investments mean that you are able to do more with your money after the time has passed than you are able to do now. Bad investments mean that you are able to do less with your money after the time than you're able to do now. Now, let's continue. Jim borrowed $1,200 from Tim at a rate of 6% per month. Jim returned $1,560 to Tim. After how much time did Jim return the money to Tim? Let's go and let's see what values we have here. So Jim borrowed this. So this becomes our principal. $1,200 at a rate of 6% per month. So our rate is 6% per month. Jim returned this amount of money to Tim. Now, if that's how much money he gave to Tim, is that the interest or is that the total? Well, he said that's how much money he gave him. So then that will be the total amount, $1,560. Which would mean that the interest would be the difference between the total amount and the principal, which is easy enough. 1560 minus 1200 is $360. Nice. And they ask us, well, how much time did it take Jim to return the money to Tim? Well, we want to find time. And if you know the formula, you could use it one time, right? That time is 100I over PR. But we're going to use from the basic formula, right? I, interest, is principal times rate times time over 100. And we're going to substitute our values in. So the interest is 360. Principal, that's 1200. Rate, that's 6. Time, we don't know yet, so that we'll just leave it as T for now. All right, and over 100. So now let's begin to transpose. Let's move the 100 first. So then that will be 360 times 100 equals to 1200 times 6 times T. Now we can move these because they're all multiplying T. So that means that T will then be 360 times 100 over 1200 times 6. Yep. So zeros cancel out the zeros, and then we'll end up with 60, and then 60 over 12, which is 5. No, 5 what? Our interest rate was in months. So it would be 5 months. Why is that important? In this particular question, it's not important, right? Because we have different values. However, let's say that I was a mean teacher and I was giving you a test, and I had as my options, I had 5 years, I had 5 weeks, I had 5 hours. And you work out your answer and you get that is 5. Which 5 would it be? That's why it's important to remember what we said. The time and the rate are in the same periods. So if the rate is per month, then the time we're talking about is number of months. If the rate was per year, then the time we're talking about is the number of years. So in this particular case, because our rate is per month, we're talking about months. So our answer would be 5 months. Cool? How about this one? Jane paid $9,600 as interest when she took on a loan that she took 5 years ago at simple interest rate of 16% per annum. What was the amount she took on the loan? How much was her principal amount? So this is how much interest she paid. Let me change this color from black so you can recognize the difference between what is on the board and what I'm putting on the board. All right? Jane paid $9,600 as interest on a loan she took 5 years ago. So her time is 5 years at an interest rate of 16% per year. So quick check. Is our time and our rate in the same period? 16 per year? Yes. Yes, they are. So we're good. What was the amount she took on the loan? So they're asking us to find the principal. Well, it means that we start with our simple interest formula. And again, if you already know how to transpose the formula, you can go ahead, because you know that principal will be 100I over RT. But for those of us that may not know it like that or find it's just too many formulas to learn, start with 1. You know 1, only 1 is the only one you need to know. And then from there you transpose. So I, interest, that's $9,600, equals to the principal, which we don't know, so that's our P, by rate, which is 16%, by time, which is 5 over 100. Let's continue. So that means that it will be 9600 times 100 equals to P. And if you want, you can multiply these two numbers quick, right? So 16 times 5 is 80, right? 16 by 5 is 80. So that means your principal will then be 9600 times 100 over 80. So let's go. That cancels there. 8 into 960, we should know our tables by now. So then 8 into 96 is 12, and put back the 0. So that's 120 times 100, which is 12,000. Now imagine that. She took a $12,000 loan. Yeah? So our answer is B. Sorry. She took a $12,000 loan, and after 5 years, ended up paying back $9,600 extra. You see? Now, if she had paid it back off in 2 years, she wouldn't have had to pay off all of that money. So remember, not because you have 5 years to pay off a loan means that you must strive to hit it for 5 years. If you can hit it for 4 or 3, you end up paying less. What about this question? In 40 years, an amount becomes 6 times the original amount. It's a little complicated, right? If the original amount was $100, what was the rate of the interest? Well, we're told this number. What is this number? This number is the principal. And we're told that after 40 years, so after the time here is 40 years, yeah? The amount becomes 6 times what it was. So the amount will now be 6 times what it initially was. You understand that, right? So if the initial amount was 100, then after 40 years, the total amount is now 600. So here's my question. What was your interest after the 40 years? Well, it will be 600 take away 100, which is $500. And now we have our principal, time, interest, and they ask us to find rate. So we can use our formula that I is equal to principal times rate times time over 100. Our interest is 500, which is equal to 100 times R times 40 over 100. And sometimes before transposition, sometimes you can simplify your calculations, yeah? So I can just take out those hundreds one time, so that my rate will then be 500 over 40, which is 50 over 4, and 50 over 4 is 12.5%. Now, what if I told you that I could have worked this entire question without giving you a principal value? Would you believe me? You see, we have to get to that point where we're comfortable with the mathematics, that even if they don't give us a standard number, we will always be able to work it out. Because here's the thing. If this number was 1,000 or 2,500 or 3,500 or $50 million, your interest rate will always end up being the same 12.5%. So we're not going to get there today. All right, that's why I put the value. But a question like this, you can actually work without even having the principal amount. Because we know that after 40 years, it was 6 times P. So if A was 6P and principal was P, then I would have been A minus the principal, which is 6P, minus P, which is 5P. And then we could have used that to actually solve the questions. But we're not going to do that today. Last question. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Just a little bit difficult because, we had to get a little bit more tough. In 4 years, the simple interest of a certain sum of money is 9/25 of the principal. What was the annual interest rate? Let's take our time here. What do we have? 4 years is time. So the time is 4 years. The simple interest on a certain sum of money is 9/25 of the principal. So if the principal was P, then the interest we know is 9/25 of P. Remember, just as we said before in the question, sometimes you don't need to get any value and we'll be able to solve it. Let's see if we can solve it. So we know that the interest is 9/25 of the principal. Do we know the principal? No. And what do we use to represent numbers we don't know as yet? We use letters. So we're just going to use P to represent the principal. What was the annual interest rate? Well, we have I, we have P. Technically, we don't, but we still do. So let's just use our formula and see where it goes, right? So we know that I is equal to principal times rate times time over 100. Now we know that we want rate, so again, if you knew how to transpose or you knew your formulas, you know it will be 100I over PT. But let's continue, right? So I is 9/25 of P. Now let's just make that just look a little bit better, right? If we were to convert 9/25 to a percentage, why? Because I just like to work with, percentage values. It looks a little bit nicer in my opinion. If you rather work with it like that, you know what? Let's work with it like that. So I times 100 will be equal to principal times rate times time. Let's substitute our values here, and then we'll transpose afterwards, and you'll see why. So I is 9/25 of P. That's what I is, right? So 9/25 of P times 100 will be equal to the principal we don't know times the rate what we're trying to find times the time, which is 4 years. Now, 25 into 100 is 4. So then we have 9 times 4 times P is equal to P times 4 times R. Now, why could I switch around the orders like that? Remember, multiplication is commutative. So let's go. Now we want to get rid of these two, so let's divide both sides by P times 4, 4P. So then we get 9 times 4 times P over P times 4 is equal to R. And boop, bap, R is 9%. So you see, in this case we had time and a fraction. But because we know what we're doing, we take our time, we follow our steps, and it still works out. And just as I told you in this previous question, I did not need to give you the principal amount so that you could work it out. Here in this question, we didn't have the principal amount, but we were still able to find the interest rate. So I will encourage you, go online, look for more questions, get some practice, understand this concept. Now here's the truth. Many institutions don't use simple interest, right, for their accounts or their loans, yeah? They would use compound interest. So compound interest is an important thing that we must understand. But I want you to first get the understanding of simple interest, right? Simple interest is easy. It's always going to be on the principal amount. As you practice more questions, you realize that it's simple. But do not underestimate the value of interest. And always ensure that if you're investing or if you're borrowing, that the money can do what you need it to do at the time. If you're investing money, it must be able to do more then than it can do now. And if you're borrowing money, the amount you're borrowing now must be worth more than the amount you have to pay back then. All right, this is Mr. Atwell. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless.